Hey guys. Hopefully my mic is working. Oh, awesome. Oh my goodness. It's Monday already. I know I complain about it every single week. Oh, let me say hello to everybody. Wonky, it's been an age. It's so good to see you. Jan, hello, hello. I think I saw Quiltish in here. Hello, and of course my dear Druid. So good to see you guys. You make my Mondays a little bit better. A lot bit better. um, I have got a treat for you guys today. See, I've got equipment. I have two copies of Godey's Ladies Book. And I've kind of flipped through them just to get an idea of what's in there. I'll tell you more about them in a minute, but yeah, I was very excited. One of them is about 10 years after Sarah Hale died. And then the other one is towards the end of Sarah Hale's, well, actually probably mid career of Sarah Hale's editorship. So it'll be interesting to look at these and see their differences. I think we can probably look through both of them today. There's not as many pictures as I had hoped. I do think that the color plates are all intact, or the plates. They're not always super in color, but the plates are still intact in the one book for sure. So I found, well, I'll talk about it more when we get to that. But yeah, I have some Godey's Ladies intel, I guess, from my experience. So, do you guys have a good weekend? I hope that the holiday season is going smoothly. It's always, the end of the year, it's always like rush, rush, rush. I feel like I always worked for companies when I was doing corporate work. Always worked for companies that had some sort of end of the year business thing. I worked in training for the finance industry, particularly mortgages, and of course their education all had to be done by year end, like December 31st. So forget about having an easygoing holiday season. And then of course I worked in retail management for a really long time, and so on and so forth. It was I did work for a few software companies where the holidays were a time to lay low because clients weren't super busy. So those were always the nice years. But yeah, it feels like every year I become less and less enamored with the holiday busyness, and it just gets busier. On top of it, my cousin is getting married this month. Now I got married on New Year's Eve, and I don't remember it causing like a whole lot of much of a stir in my family. It was kind of like it was an easy decision for people. I know a few people had some travel issues, and I totally understood that. But for some reason, my cousin is getting married on December 20th, which is a Friday. Like, and I'm sure she's doing all this for, in order to get the space she wanted, and because it's the holiday season and all that stuff. And I'm just like, girl, why? Why? And I have to travel to a different state, and it's just a thing. Anyway, other people's holiday stuff is getting in my way. So, a quick update on tiny things. So, my advent calendar, my mini brands advent calendar yielded 4 new things this weekend. 2 of them are super cute. Well, they're all super cute. So today was an itty bitty Dora the Explorer. I guess she's supposed to be like a Dora doll. So, Friday I got a JoJo Siwa. I don't know how well this is translating. It's a JoJo Siwa microphone. Now, JoJo's show is not on anymore, and I really just kind of learned about her a little bit. She has maybe not had a super productive transition into adulthood. She's a child star. Apparently, she was on Toddlers and Tiaras or something. Like, she came out of that world, the Honey Boo Boo world. And she made a big splash with these big hair bows. I remember my niece had like bazillions of them. Anyway, now that she's an adult, she's trying out this punk pop thing that I think that people are going, girl, you did not invent this. go away. So anyway, Jojo Siwa. And then my two favorite ones were Saturday and Sunday, and they are Tiny Glue, Tiny Crayola Glue, and Tiny Crayola Markers. Ah! This one's very adorable. So it does look like just about everything in this advent calendar is going to be contemporary toys. I'd hope that there would be some food. I kind of like the food ones. They're fun. And you guys saw my Yule log cake the other day from that other, I guess, Mini Brands competitor. That was very silly, but also very fun. So, yeah, they are definitely cute quiltish. I keep thinking, like, what am I going to do with all this stuff? I actually do have some art ideas for incorporating some of my duplicates into some artwork. So this isn't just random collections of tiny useless things. They're random collections of tiny useless things with the purpose of maybe making art out of them. But, as I told my husband, I'm like, economy's not great. We're trying to, not spend money on a lot of things. And certainly Christmas is not going to be extravagant this year. And so, like, a couple bucks for something little. I think he stops and gets chicken minis at Chick-fil-A. I'm like, for the cost of chicken minis, I can have cute things. So that's the deal. So what else was I going to ask? Oh, okay. This is going to be out of completely out of left field, and I know you guys are going to be like, Cake, what are you talking about? I have been asking this question of people, and I don't have like a really fully fleshed out idea of why I'm asking, but it does have to do with memory and some of the things that I look at in my artwork kind of on the outer rims of mental health, because memory is very closely related to certain senses. And so the one sense is that I've always read this, that the sense of smell, your sense of smell is very closely related to memory and can trigger memories more easily than, say, other senses. Because I think that, like, certainly our visual and auditory memory sometimes gets convoluted, and we can misremember things, or over time sort of replace the real memories with our perceived memories. But there's something about smell that is either like you know it when you smell it, and if something is like a fake smell, like, I mean, we've all smelled the air fresheners and things that are supposed to smell like a thing and they don't. We recognize that right away. So I've been asking people, what is their favorite smell? And I want to ask you guys that. And now I know it's one of those things like people ask you, what's your favorite color? And I'm like, oh, well, hot pink, of course. But I really also like Robin's Egg Blue. And, I've really been attracted to like a sunny mustard yellow too. So it's one of those things I think creative people kind of struggle with, like sometimes being able to narrow it down. But I want to ask you, put it out there in the chat if you are willing and interested. What is your favorite smell? And I mean, you're welcome to share a few. You're welcome to share, I mean, it doesn't have to be the favorite smell, but a favorite smell. I've gotten all kinds of answers. Some of them are interesting. I thought for a minute, because I'm doing a couple of little Christmas gifties for a few friends, and I had asked one friend, and I was thinking, oh, well, maybe if they come up with a smell that I could get, something like a fruit, or maybe it's something that I could find as incense or air freshener or something like that. If they came up with a smell, and I could send them that to cheer them up for the holidays. And this person's answer was roast chicken. So needless to say, this person will not be getting roast chicken in their little holiday greetings that I'm planning to send them. Although I do think it's entirely possible. There's a joke company called Archie McPhee. If you're familiar with some of the silly little like office desk type toys and things, I see them all over the place. So they rubber chickens they have. So they're like a lot of jokey kind of fun white elephant gift kind of stuff. And year round they send stuff. My son loves their things, so we get their catalog. They have air fresheners and candy canes and maybe gum that has some weird scents and flavors. And sometimes you think, oh, they're just kidding. No, they're not kidding. They have gravy flavored candy canes. So I kind of thought for a minute, I'm like, maybe there is a roast chicken air freshener that I could get my friend, but I can't stand behind that. That's a smell that has to be a real roast chicken. Roast chicken scented items can't possibly smell good. So, you guys, while we're talking today, there's some good smells out there. And why? My favorite smells, I mean, I always say lavender. Lavender's a very calming scent. I really love it. And there's this mixture of like lavender and maybe, I don't know, not eucalyptus, but I can't really quite put my finger on what it is. But if you go in a gift shop at a historic home, they're always going to have this like spa-like lavendery herbal smell. The organic cosmetics aisle at Whole Foods also kind of smells like this. And so that is just a wonderful smell. It's so very calming. And I love sandalwood, particularly like Japanese temple incense is a very fine incense. And they have the sandalwood smell that is, so good. And I know the one that's going to cause people to look at me like kind of weird, Vaseline Intensive Care Lotion. And it's because my grandmother used it. And so every time I smell that, and it's really hard to find now because the Vaseline lotion brand, they keep coming out with all these like, tropical scent. And I'm like, no. You need unscented, the original one. And I've had a really hard time finding it. Anyway, those are my favorite smells. Quiltish Satsuma scent of So Fine Thread. So first of all, So Fine Thread Gloss, they have yummy smells. I have I think it's citrus and sage that I got at QuiltCon recently this year. Oh, so good. Bergamot, absolutely. That's the smell of Earl Grey tea. That is a really good one and one that I also highly love. And cinnamon. Now, cinnamon always, of course, reminds me of the holidays. And just baked goods in general. So those are all top notch. I love those. So lavender, patchouli, nag champa. Yes. It's what your house smells like, or what you think your house smells like. Yes. I think my house probably smells like probably a combination of sandalwood and nag champa, and maybe one of my perfumes or shampoo. And, I wash my hair, put shampoo or put, perfume on. Those are all good smells. I'm liking them all. Nobody yet is topping roast chicken, though. And by the way, if there's any confusion, this is a man that gave me this answer. So that should not come as a surprise. Women like these lovely, fruit and floral fragrances and just, nice smelling things that we would put a dab behind our ears. Men, it's always about the food. Eucalyptus. Yeah. Eucalyptus is, I think, one of those smells that like, it's just a little tad. I'm trying to think. Tim Robbins wrote a book. Oh, and it's right there on the tip of my tongue. But it was one of his crazy, like, Still Life with Woodpecker, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is not one of his books. I'm trying to remember the one. There was one about hitchhiking. But in any event, I read all of his books when I was in college, and one of them was about scents and perfume, and there was a lot of kind of explanation in there. And I think, assuming that it was like accurate information, I actually learned some stuff about, base notes and top notes and all that kind of stuff with fragrances. It was some interesting stuff. So keep them coming. Fake vanilla is awful. Absolutely. Yeah, that's why I have issue with places like Yankee Candles and Scentsy, and I mean just any kind of scent stuff. I think things that are made with essential oils tend to be like legit essential oils tend to be the ones that smell good. So Jan says bread or cookies baking. Yes. Lavender, lilac, and peaches. Okay. I'm trying to think peaches. Like a nice fruity, like a juicy fruity smell. That's a good smell too. All right, you guys, keep them coming as you think of them. All right. So, I asked you about smells. Oh, a dear friend has MDC Crawford's cotton book that we're reading. If you remember last week, we got into some stuff. We're like, Morris, what is this book? What are you doing? We'll get there in a minute if you haven't listened. But she has the book with an original dust jacket, and on the back it has a bio of MDC Crawford. So Morris, we'll get to the bottom of Morris. Frankincense and myrrh. Yes, I have actually done that before. You can get like the little chunks of frankincense and myrrh, and you put it on. They make those little charcoal discs for burning incense. Yeah. I'm not, so like vanilla is not one of my favorites. And like a baby powder, powdery floral scents, I don't like those. And my mom does. So we kind of fight over that. Sometimes I'm like, I don't like that. So, you guys ready to look at some Godey's ladies book? It was both exactly what I expected and also kind of surprising. So let's jump in. Let us waste no more time. Ooh, 2 sticks together with a pretty bead and a hank of hemp string. Very lovely. All right, where is my screen for this? Here we go. All right, I raised the surface up a little bit so that you could see them better. Okay, and bear with me a minute. It has gone. Oh no, 2 of me. Sometimes it likes to stop operating, so there we go. Okay. So what we have here are 2 Godey's ladies books. This one, 1887. This is 10 years after Sarah Hale passed away and 9 years after Louis Godey passed away. So Godey's ladies book is under completely different management now. In fact, so it says it's edited by Mrs. Crawley, who is using this pen name of Jenny June. And then in very small print, it says copyright 1887 by Crawley Publishing Company. So I'm guessing this woman and her family, or this woman, went on to edit Godey's. And I feel like Ruth Finley in The Lady of Godey's might have kind of mentioned this. I feel like the name Crawley is sounding really familiar. So we'll look at this one second based on time. But this one, most excitingly, is the December 1858 edition. So, or volume. And there's a couple of interesting differences between these two. So first of all, these volumes, she did everything, or Louis Godey and Sarah Hale did everything in volumes. So this is the last issue of the year, and it is paginated as such. And you can see the pagination. I mean, we've got numbers 537 page. So this is a continuation of the whole year. Whereas when we get to 1887, this is numbered just like a regular magazine. I mean, this is page 15, like you would expect. And trying to be careful. These pages are super crumbly. And you do have a volume, but it's not referenced as much. So definitely kind of a difference in how they were handling the magazine. I think there's also some more illustrative kinds of things in here, although they're both very, very text heavy. One other thing, and so as I was looking over these on eBay and on the internet, I did the barest minimum research on the bound copies, and the bound copies are, I want to say I found a couple of them online where they're, I don't know, like $50, and that would be a whole year's worth of, or assuming a whole year's worth of these. But for the most part, they're usually like around $100 or more each. And I would assume that the years around like the Civil War are probably, and this again, this is just a guess. I did not like sit there and do year by year comparisons, but I'm guessing that those might be a little bit more collectible or a little bit more rare, simply because if you remember, there was a time when literally like entire deliveries of magazines never made it because the mail system was disrupted. So anyway, that's just an observation on my part. Otherwise, there's a lot of them out there. They're not cheap. This one, I won this one on eBay, and I think my winning bid was like $3. I paid more to have it shipped than I paid for it. I think total was like $8 or $9. The seller, I think, was not pleased with that because literally it was barely delivered, and they were already messaging me like, "Where's my, where's my my rating?" This one was gifted to me. So, without further ado, let's take a look. And I'm gonna do a little museum trick to support this. So first of all, here on the front cover, we have all of these lovely illustrations. It's actually really pretty. And I think, having looked at these online, they seem to be very similar, like with these sort of illustrations on the front. They look, from a distance, a lot of them look very similar. There's also the paper is in really, really rough shape, and they're really crumbling. And this is why I assume it made sense to people to get their books bound, get their magazines bound. And, this is something that they did a lot in the 19th century and I guess early 20th century. I think libraries were doing it until not that long ago. Oh, now my Surface Cam is frozen. So I did a quick look to see, how and why. And, obviously why is because this paper, and I think people recognize this early on, this paper is like, it's like a recycled pulp. And it probably was beginning to deteriorate even then because it's like so crumbly. So, I'm thinking that for longevity, obviously they would have things bound together. You just can't do that now. I don't even know where you would go to with a stack of magazines and say, hey, I want these bound into a book. I'm sure there's some company or individual that does still do it or would do it for you. They'd probably charge you an arm and a leg. I don't know. There has to be like, they'd have to use bookbinding machinery because, if you go to say FedEx office and ask to have like a book or something rebound, they're going to do it like as a spiral bound. So yeah, that binding things in these volumes is definitely a lost art in my opinion. So there's lots of interesting things here on the front cover, but because of missing pieces, I'm not entirely sure what everything says. But here at the bottom, it says our advertisement for 1859. To look at it because there are very reasonable terms for clubs. So I'm assuming women's clubs could probably get us a subscription. And then up here at the top, this is the Democrat in McConnellsburg, Pennsylvania. So this is another publication. I'm guessing that's basically saying all our periodicals seem to imitate Godey's. So make up your clubs for next year. I don't know what the leading sentence said. Okay. So there's lots and lots of text in here. And I just did a basic skimming. Some of it is hilarious. Some of it is kind of just, of the time sort of um, advertisements and language. So here is one of the plates. And this one is Christmas for the Rich. Christmas for the Rich. So you have a roaring fire and everybody's sitting there. The children have toys. They're reading a storybook. There appears to be a servant back here with I'm guessing it's a cake or something on a plate. So a merry old time in the rich household. Now here's Christmas for the poor. Move this over a little bit. These poor people in rags. She appears to be barefoot or just in her stocking feet. They're at the door of somebody rich. They're knocking. There's this dog down here with a basket. I don't know. I guess they're asking for handouts. I'm not exactly sure what's happening here. The poor. And you notice these pages, they have a leaf between them to keep them from, I guess, rubbing off on each other. And they are not printed on the back. And the paper's a little bit heavier. It's still this pulpy paper, but it's a little bit heavier than the paper with just text on it. So these are the colored plates. So this one is Godey's Unrivaled Color Fashions. Remember, this is a fashion magazine. Despite the fact that most of it is text, there's not a lot of fashion in it. There's just a little bit of fashion. And then this, the editorial slipper. The pen is mightier than the sword. I think I remember we heard about that. That was a Sarah Hale belief, right? What year? This is 1858. This one. All right. So here we do have some fashions. Oh, first though. Oh yes, here we have some fashions. This is children's dresses. And then we have Gondolina Schottische by Edward Amble. It is composed and arranged for the pianoforte for Godey's Lady's Book and inscribed to Maddie C. Gilbert, Ghent, New York. So, I don't think that is there any... Yeah, this is all just instrumental. I wonder what it's... It's a Scottish dance. Oh, well, that's interesting. It looks complicated. I took one semester of piano lessons as an adult and was told I had no rhythm. So, now here are some lovely dresses. This one's called The Rose, and it says see description page 569. That is in this book. The Ophelia, and the descriptions are absolutely useless. Here's just some random fancy dresses. Let's see. Yeah. Random fancy dresses. This guy is dressed up in something fancy too. More fancy dresses. Now this is cool up here. This is embroidery for an infant's shirt. And then here we have pattern for silk embroidery. And then here, ladies dressing slipper in damask tapestry. And this is another embroidery pattern for an infant shirt. So this says the materials are number 16 canvas, gold thread, and rich claret, green or Marie-Louise blue wool. It's basically like, here you go, needlepoint this thing. This is a traveling wallet. Also another complicated stitching design. And then here, a lounging cap in braid. Mid 19th century, trimming things with this fancy braid, like on the back of an outfit or around the bottom of a skirt, the hem of a skirt, or small items. Braid and soutache were very, very, very popular to stitch down, and they draw these, sort of swirly ass things, or whatever you want to call them, and then carefully stitch down this braid, and it's a long process. So this, Philadelphia, December 1858. Oriental Sketches by Mrs. Sarah Barclay Johnson, resident of Jerusalem. So there's Bethlehem, little picture of Bethlehem. And I think this one's not too terribly long, whatever this is about. I didn't read any of these articles or stories, whatever they are, very deeply. Here we have Turkish dancing girls and harem. This is the Ecce Homo Arch. And then, let's see, here's a shopping expedition in some sort of bazaar. And then we just move right on into another article. This is Jessie Moore's journal. And the journal is dated June 19th. This could very well be a continuation, I guess. Swirly ass things. Yes, that is the technical term. Particularly in the 19th century. So, yeah. Who wrote this, by the way? Who was keeping this? I don't know if it's a work of fiction. Mrs. Virginia F. Townsend. And I believe I remember her name from Ruth Finley's book. Jessie's journal goes on for quite a while, whomever Jessie Moore is. It goes on until August. And then we get to fashions in the older time, or the olden time. And that starts here at the bottom. Now this one's interesting. So this says, the following is a bill bearing date 1719. So this is this is like 150 years in the past, which will give us a very fair idea of not only what a fashionable lady used to wear at that date, but will also enable us to notice the price of the various articles. And so they've given the prices in pounds and shillings. And some of them will call out a smock of cambric Holland, £2, 2 shillings. What's the really expensive one here? A French point ruffles and tucker, £80. A mantua and petticoat of French brocade, £78. So those were expensive items. A Flanders lace handkerchief, £10. £10 today. I'm thinking if I was in England and, was asked for £10 to pay for something, I'd be like, yeah, if it was a meal, sure. If it was a pack of gum, I don't think so. Pockets of Marseille quilting, £1, 5 shillings. Let's see. A sable tippet, £15. A riding suit with embroidery of Paris, £47, 10 shillings. 3 dresses for the masquerade, 2 from Venice, £36. And then 1 from Paris of green velvet, a la Sultanese, set with pearls and rubies, £123. So whoever owned these items was very wealthy, I would have to say. The next article by Annie Froust, Christmas for Rich and Poor. I didn't read this. I think it might be fun, perhaps. I'll skim it and see if it's worth it, and maybe we'll read this on a different day. Let's see. Now here, we skip right on to paper flower making. So there's patterns, but we don't necessarily know what these things are supposed to look like when they're done. Obviously, this is a honeysuckle. You know what honeysuckle looks like. This one, a heart's tease, a hyacinth, a sweet pea, snowball, Japanese rose. I mean, we generally know what these things look like, but yeah, they don't bother to illustrate what the final things will be. And I've noticed that in a lot of older magazines, it's kind of like you're just sort of expected to understand, I guess. And I think that's why when you see handmade items from, the 19th century, early 20th century, I mean, all the way up to like mid century, 20th century, I guess, when they were, starting to illustrate books and magazines better. There's a really wide range of what things ended up looking like. Margaret's Home, A Household Tale by Alice Haven. Sorry, Alice B. Haven. Mrs. Daffodil Hunts for Mrs. Smith. I didn't miss anything in there. That's by Virginia DeForest. Let's hope she's not, she's just looking for her, hopefully not hunting her with a blunderbuss. The Family Drawing Master in a series of familiar conversations. So this is perspective drawing. I bet you did not expect that in Godey's. I'm not exactly sure. There's a lot of interesting sort of phrases here in this section, so I don't know that it's all about drawing. A Christmas Eve. I'll review that one too and see if it's worth a read. The Little Store by S.A. Wentz. Another name I think I remember. Even if it's just a mention, I knew that Ruth Finley she listed a lot of names, and particularly women that wrote. So here we get into some poems. We've got The Child Alone with Nature, Little Eddie, Lines, Memory, The Dying Girl, oh joy, Shall I Be Missed, Spirit Longings. None of these are written by Sarah Hale. To MCF, The Rose Leaf, Sonnet, and then Enigmas. Answers to charades and enigmas in November number. So I believe this were probably some type of puzzles. The answers were 13 primrose, 14 toast rack, 15 right, 16 wait. So here we have the charades. When winter spreads his icy arms and shows his powerful sway, my first upon the roofs around, is seen on many a day. This text is really small. And when the first frost begins to break, the sun begins to gleam, my first, my second soon becomes and flows into a stream. My whole's a welcome pretty flower that cheers the cold and wintry hour. So I guess is, what is this? It's supposed to be. Well, and then enigmas. From me the infant first doth learn, the student knowledge gain. The sage improves his well-stored mind, and studies not in vain. In every language do I speak, English, German, French, and Greek. Study me well, and then you'll see your time will well rewarded be. I guess it's a book. I don't know. Yeah, and so it just goes on more. Oh my word. This one is, I am composed of 27 letters. Ugh, I don't even know. The Victorian people, they loved these things. Novelties for December. Let me move this over so you can see this nonsense. Look at these hats. Bonnets. I mean, look at this stuff. This is a sleeve, I believe. That looks like a sleeve, maybe. I don't know. It could be a hat. I think it's a sleeve. This thing, I mean, look at that. All ribbons and lace and junk hanging from it. I think this is a sleeve, too. Those ribbons and things. Oops. Ribbons and things. Novelties. And here is more. Insertion lace. This is a lapel collar. Suited to morning dress. A quilted silk bonnet. Bonnet with a soft crown, half cap inside the brim with a single full-blown rose. Oh my. And then look at this. Drapery body for evening costume. Look at all of this stuff. All these swaths and swirls and things. Oh my goodness. Something else. Now we have more crafts. This is a hand netted curtains. Here's a little holly berries and things for a gentleman's shirt bosom. This one was fun. A fancy beaded basket made of white glass beads strung on wire. And this says diagram of drapery body. So for that fancy dress. By the way, this is the work department. The gypsy basket. I did notice this, and I thought I would read some of this. So it's like a little work basket. It's got this crocheted bottom, and then it's got this line of like ribbon fanciness, and then this top part is like a bag, and then it's got the little handles. So what they say about this: the gypsy basket is a pretty variety of work basket, so useful to all ladies and very easily made. It is, in fact, characterized by its extreme simplicity. It looks very simple, doesn't it? And can be made without any of the trouble of thought, which sometimes attaches to the more intricate sorts of fancy work, making their production rather an effort of mind than a relaxation from other pursuits. The foundation of this basket is formed of a round of crochet work, which is made strong and solid by being worked over a card. So some sort of cardboard. No fancy stitches are introduced. This round is to be of about the size of a small plate. This forms the bottom or foundation of the basket. This looks the best in netting silk, but it can be done in Berlin wool. And Berlin work was just like a wool needlepoint. Netting silk obviously is for making this kind of stuff, but I don't know how heavy it was. Like, is it a thread? Is it a cording? I don't know. I don't think it's something that we easily have access to today. This round being completed, a silk bag must be added to it, sewn on just round its inner edge, slightly fold in and deeper at each side than in front and back of the bag. Doesn't it sound easy already? You've got it in mind, right? This is done by cutting away part of the silk on the side where it is attached, but leaving the upper margin straight so that it may draw up regularly into a little frilled heading by means of the ribbon strings, which are to be run in 3/4 of an inch below. The handles are of twisted silk cord. A quilling of narrow ribbon is carried all around the edge of the crochet part where the silk bag is attached. This bag looks extremely well made, entirely of crimson or dark blue, colors that may be preferred for service. But if intended as a present, then the crochet part may be in a light maize and the bag and trimming in a bright pink or French blue, the handles being of the two colors twisted together. So yeah, go whip that up. I'll wait. A gentleman's necktie, apparently made of purse silk and netting. It's a netted thing. A doll collar. That's pretty. A fancy mat with bead border. The center of this mat is embroidered on canvas. Another thing to just quickly whip up. This thing, a winter mantle or sorte de bal. I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. In crochet. A little item for a shirt bosom. And for these, I'm like, does it go over a pocket? Like, where do you put that? Is it just there, like, on the chest somewhere? Inquiring minds want to know. Oh, hey, BFD Lee. You need one of those neckties? Okay. Druid and I will work on that. All right. I really liked this. So, name for marking is Lucy. Isn't that pretty? It's like a little, leaves and it's fancy. It's like a little ribbon. That's actually really pretty. And then check this out. Design for quilting. Let me hold that up so you can see it. It's not really a design that I super recognize, and it seems like an all over sort of thing. So yeah. And then the Valencian. Check that out. This says this is from the establishment of G. Brody, Canal Street, New York. Fancy, fancy. Okay, this is Plans for a Cottage, published in November. So you've got crafts to make, poems to read, and a cottage to construct. And then we move right on into receipts, which, if you didn't know, that actually means recipes. I don't know, when did we go from calling them recipes? When was that change from receipts to recipes? It's got to be 20th century or late 19th century. So lots of different recipes here. Some bills of fare. So you've got some menus. Right here in the middle, we have sick room and nursery. And I'm not going to read this, but I did read this in full myself, and it's so random. But it talks about, in the case of real mental disease, especially if it be of long standing, you will frequently find your patient disposed to talk about it. So it's like, here's how to make puff pastry. Here's some great menus for the holidays. And by the way, if one of your relatives is crazy, here's how to deal with that. Oh my gosh. Through it. So around 1900, okay, turn of the century, the word recipe gained more widespread use and then skyrocketed in the 50s. In conclusion, it's perfectly acceptable to use receipt or recipe when talking about those cooking directives from the Civil War era. Gotcha. Okay. Now this, I'm going to skim through this because you guys have to hear this. So, miscellaneous. We've got how to clean tea trays, how to make fried calf's liver, how to make lard candles, and then chemistry for the young. This is going to blow your mind. So this is lesson. So we assume that this is continued from previous issues. Lesson, let's see, XI, that's lesson 11. But there is a bichloride or perchloride of mercury called bichloride because it contains twice the amount of chlorine for an equal amount of mercury contained in the protochloride called perchloride, from per, very much, inasmuch as it is the highest compound of chlorine with mercury. Oh my gosh. So it goes into a whole bunch of things about investigating and procuring 2 grains of bichloride of mercury, a corrosive sublimate, and having put it into a flask, pour in about a wine glass full of distilled water and apply heat. So this is assuming that somebody's got a chemistry setup, I guess. This is the craziest thing I've seen in a women's magazine. It talks about soluble and insoluble compounds. And then we're getting down in here, and I kept looking, and I'm like, does it talk about how this will kill you? Take the white of an egg and beat it up evenly with water. Then allow the turbid, flaky portion to deposit and decant the rest. It is a well-established principle that no substance insoluble in the stomach can act chemically as a poison. Is that true? I mean, I'm not a chemist. I don't know. I think it's really a good idea not to consume any kind of compound that could be poisonous, whether it's soluble or not. So albumin or egg white or white of egg then is not only a test of, but an antidote for bichloride of mercury. Here you guys have it. If you're ever poisoned by bichloride of mercury, Godey's Lady's book says egg white. Okay, and that was just informational. Please don't go messing around with perchloride and bichloride. Where do you get those things? I mean, once upon a time, I guess you bought this stuff at the drugstore. I don't know. I don't even know what these things are for. Mercury? I mean, it was a cure for syphilis, I think, but good Lord. Okay, moving right along. And that was chemistry for the young. We're not just talking about some whatever. All right, the editor's table. So these are editorial letters, I believe. How can social and domestic life be improved? Indeed. A blind girl's idea of ladies. I mean, just the randomness in here. Health department. This is a whole thing about drinking water. I scanned that. It talks about how good water is for you. And artificial drinks are not good. Well, but we knew this in 1858, so literary notices. So then we've got all of these books that have been published, and I think this goes on for a little bit. Yeah. And then the famous Godey's armchair. Remember, this is Louis Godey's little platform where he talks about things. And I mean, it's just kind of the you know, he's just saying things basically. Solvent banks, country press clubs and borrowers. I mean, he's just got things to say about stuff. Yeah, I mean, and I see some, you know, kind of mentions of things that we were familiar with. Mrs. S.J. Hale's school, now in its third year. So, you know, she was crusading for ladies' education. Center table gossip, married and single. Ooh la la. You know, this is like the gossip stuff. And now we get to the fashions. So this section here described the pictures. So we've got a description of the Rose, the Ophelia, La Victoria, the Valencian. The Valencian probably has the greatest description. So if I can, let's see if I can flip back to that one without. Here we go. So the Valencian. So here's what it says about the Valencian. The construction of the sleeves in this garment constitutes the chief differences between it and that which we published in the September number. It will be observed that they are double, the upper one being shorter and pointed below. It is slashed up through its whole length and the opposite sides connected, although leaving a space between which the undersleeve appears by a crown cording. Tassels are placed at several angles and points of the garment, which is further ornamented by rich passementerie, which we know is like the fancy little trims and things, that cannot be represented in the engraving. The hood is especially neat in this style. It is docked with 2 tassels. Its shape is pointed, and the satin lining plain to the shoulders, where it commences to be gathered, adds a very pleasing finish to the garment. The above is drawn from a drab cloth, but perhaps the favorite color is black, in which they are chiefly made. Oh my goodness. And so here is all of the advertising about next year. So everything that's going to be available in 1859. Gardening, the musical department, the health department. Oh, everybody's got something. A list of the literary people: Marion Harland, Alice Haven, Lucy Godfrey, Pauline Forsyth, Virginia Townsend. Oh, they're all writing. Mrs. Daffodil. So good stuff. And then just more. And then there is a table of contents for, it says for volume 57. I think it's volume 57. So this is a table of contents for everything that was in the previous issues through this one for the year. And then we have a prospectus from the Saturday Evening Post, which is basically bragging about how much they paid this guy for this novelette, which was $1,680. So yeah, it's interesting. So it's like, subscribe to us, but also this is how much we pay our writers. Weirdness. And then Godey's Ladies book, Excelsior. I love the fact that just in this little section up here, there are 4 different fonts. And so this goes through the embellishments that are here in this magazine, in this issue, and a little overview of the contributors and contents. And that is the 1858 issue for December. I don't know that we're going to have a whole lot of time to look at the non-Sarah one, but one thing to point out, this is saddle stitched, right? No. I'm sorry. Saddle stitched is when it's, or is that pamphlet stitched? Ugh. Well, in any event, whichever way this is described in terms of bookbinding, this is the 2 little stitches there with cord. Whereas, if we look at the 1887 issue, it is stapled. So you can see where there were staples. And it's kind of in the same location, but they had staples. So I'm thinking, oh geez, there's like a whole whole strip. I'm thinking for this one, I'm going to take the staples out so I can put it. Okay, Quilches is right, pamphlet stitch, yeah. So this one, I'm thinking if I take the staples out, I can put it into sleeves. I'm not sure what to do with this one though, because I don't necessarily want to, and it's still got, I think that goes there. It's still got its spine, so I'm not really sure what to do. I wanted to scan it, so then I could spend time reading the articles. So we'll see. I'll have to do a little bit of research and see what makes the most sense. But let's see very quickly. Where to put this? Where to put it? I don't know that my little my little dealio here is helping, but there were a lot more patent. It looked like more patent medicine ads in this issue. Tell me, what are moth patches? I remember seeing this as soon as I got it open up. It says, only for moth patches, freckles, and tan. Use Perry's Moth and Freckle Lotion. It is reliable. For pimples on the face, blackheads, and flesh worms. Oh my God. Ask your druggist for Perry's Come Done and Pimple Remedy, the infallible skin remedy. And there's this lady here with lots of little dots on her face. I don't know if those are moth patches or pimples. Oh my goodness. The Temple of Beauty. Pears of soap. So yeah, there's a lot more advertising in here and a lot more pictures. Fawn Weiss, a cream for the teeth. Skin discoloration like a mask of pregnancy. Okay. So yeah, I guess I'm all covered with the moth patches because I've got lots of discoloration. Rubifoam tooth powder. Colton's select flavors. Oh my. Ayers pills for malaria and yellow fever. Oh my goodness. Okay. Here, I think I've seen this illustration before. These creepy babies sitting in roses. And it says June roses. And the teeny tiny print says, engraved by Edward Rice, Philadelphia, expressly for Godey's Ladies book. So, very exciting. And then here are some of the color plates that I think are, really commonly thought of when you think of Godey's. And I don't know if I ever mentioned, for some reason, Dr. Dunton in his files had a set, and they appeared to be like sold as a set and not out of a magazine. They were a set of Godey's illustrations of fashions. They were like almost like trading cards. They were kind of small. Effervescent seltzer. I love this. Look at the little animals. Such cute illustrations. Whatever this is. Seltzer. Oh, it's like Pepto-Bismol. Nausea, heartburn, indigestion. Yeah, we have constipation, indigestion, dyspeptic ways. So yeah, what we can see here, it's a lot still of text and things. It does have a little bit of a different feel. I mean, you've kind of got like I feel like the spacing is done differently. It's a little bit more like a magazine or a periodical as we would expect it. Cashmere bouquet perfume. Oh my, for the handkerchief. So, yeah, Dolores. My Lady, Theodora. By Cousin Marion. Oh my goodness. More about teaching birds. Really? Teaching birds? I guess this is training captive birds, captive canaries. Yep. The things that people did. Belle Fraser's girlhood. Dodo's work. A fish story. These are all very interesting sounding. Mr. Wilby's story. The Spirit of a Song. Record of Women. I don't. Okay, it's just random things about women. Gossip from New York. You always have to have that gossip from New York. Today and Tomorrow. The events and inventions that are most talked about. A chapter of contemporaneous history. That's interesting. We'll have to come back to that sometime. A garden party costume. This one feels a little bit less crumbly, but you see the fashions have changed. They're still ridiculous, but they have changed. We see more details of embroidery and things. This crazy hat. Now look at that. It looks like a basket, kind of. A mourning bodice. And that mourning being the time of day, not being sad after somebody dies type of mourning. Now this is interesting. This little hat. I thought this little hat was cute. A little sort of fedora-like. A bouquet. Oh, lovely. Forming a aigrette of grains and foliage for hat or bonnet. Stringless bonnet of gauze striped with chenille and bordered with gold tissue lace and feather aigrette or aigre. I don't know. It's, I'm sure, some sort of Frenchy thing. Love that hat. Yeah, I mean, these are kind of cute and definitely, a change from what we were seeing, 30 years before, 28 years before. Summer evening dress. Oh, look, I liked this. A crescent pin French jersey in elastic cloth. I don't know if elastic cloth means something just that's like knitted so that it has like a stretch to it, like a jersey or what. I mean, French jersey, that seems to me to be like a knitted thing. Morning costumes in cambric, foulard, and embroidery chambray. Yep. It's like the second bustle era. We have some cute outfits for children. We have this particular, let's see, white underskirt. So this particular bustle underskirt thing is often called the lobster because it's very lobstery. A Scotch mountain costume, in case you're going to go traipsing about the Scottish Highlands. Chats with correspondents. The Shopper. Now, this is interesting. I saw this as I flipped through and I didn't stop to see what it was. Canfield Shield. The Canfield Company manufacture many other useful articles, among them the Langtree Bustle, which has obtained a great vogue abroad as well as at home because of its peculiar construction, which folds up when the wearer sits down and springs into place again when she rises. It is also very durable and does not get out of order. They make also a kind of dusting cap, which can be used for bathing caps and are very becoming. Now, these are more children's clothing and things. Oh, look at this bonnet. Oh, my God. Poor child. That is a very Sunbonnet Sue looking thing, though. And the little boys in their little knee pants. Okay, House and Home. Over the Fence. What one woman said to another. I can only imagine. Work table. Okay, here's some interesting designs. Oh, and then these are more receipts. Force meat for roast veal. Veal and ham pie. Sweet pickles. Barley gruel. So this is an interesting sort of thing. Now, 1887, this is right after the height of crazy quilting. But I didn't see anything in here necessarily. A shoe bag, an umbrella case. This was, let's see, a gored skirt with casings for hoops. So these are based on just lengths of fabric and then cutting the gores out of them. Books. Books are still very important to Godey's, which is good to see. Publisher's notice. Here is yet another plans for living quarters, I guess. Very beneficial effect. Okay. So the cost of this house is about $4,000. It's kind of a cute little house. The Blood Boils with patriotic heat. Ayers sarsaparilla. Ayers hair vigor. Okay. Sarsaparilla is a drink. Hair vigor. It prevents the hair from turning gray, ensures its vigorous growth, and keeps the scalp white and clean. Epps. Epps cocoa. Grateful and comforting. Okay. Here's another bustle cage. Sozodont Beauty and Fragrance. Berries. Trichoferous for the hair. These ads are so crazy. Kidder's Digestolin. Oh my gosh. Posani's medicated complexion powder. To make and sell pure ink. All right then. Sick headache? And then the back of this is Jason S. Kirkin Company's, or James S. Kirkin Company's White Russian soap. Oh my goodness. Well, you guys, that was 2 issues of Godey's Ladies Book. I'm hoping at some point to get my hands on a few others from the Sarah Hale era. I'm also hoping at some point in time in the near future, or at some point, to obtain one of the Mountain books. I know our friend Kate found one when she was, I think she said she found hers in a antique store. So the thing is, here's the thing. I know in antique stores, people that, dealers and sellers that understand Godey's Ladies Book, no doubt, are the ones that have them priced as such. I'm guessing you could probably find them going through, hey Jill, going through like, if you've ever been to an antique mall and you have like a book dealer, And they no doubt have stuff like this tucked away in there. Um, they're difficult, you know. They're you have to go to those places with the intention of spending the time to look through every single thing, or every single thing that looks like it could be a bound volume of Godey's Ladies books. So I have not taken the time to do that. I will try that one day in the future when I do go somewhere. Jill, are you listening? We got to find some bound Godey's Ladies books for less than a fortune. But yeah, I feel like I'm going to add that to my list of things to look for, because these are truly interesting. And I did find, when I was looking for information about like how and when and where they got these volumes bound, my guess, I couldn't find anything very specific. I didn't dive too deep into this, but my guess is when you'd see those, like the local stationer store, you know, where you could buy all kinds of things, from stationery to, I guess, getting your magazines bound is what I would guess. But I read this article, written by a person, it was like a blog post, that said, you know, look for these bound magazines. And they weren't talking about Godey's, but they were saying like the Atlantic, or I don't think maybe she mentioned the New Yorker. I don't know, but these magazines that have been published for 100 or more years, you can find those volumes, you know, at thrift stores and all that kind of stuff. So they were really encouraging people to pick those up, you know, if you could find them for cheap. And so that's what I'm hoping to stumble across, some Godey's. The other thing I noticed when I was just looking around and doing research is that poorer copies of the issues are sold by people that do junk journaling and scrapbooking. And my heart broke when I saw some of those, because they're like the pages that have the fun stuff, the pages that have the pretty illustrations, and they're tearing and cutting those out of these books. And, you know, granted, when it's so tattered and there's nothing left, I understand. But also, like, I want to read these. So stop tearing them up, people. I want to know what these articles are. But yeah, the person that was talking about getting these bound versions of them mentioned that, you know, there's some really interesting writing in them. And, you know, these serial stories, and they're people that have just been totally forgotten about. So if you find one, if you run across one, let me know. Let me know what you think. You know, we'll have to hear what's in it. That might be interesting. So yes, quilt. Well, yeah, absolutely quiltish. I mean, we, Edgar Allan Poe, you know, and also I would venture to guess the issues with the really famous writers like Poe are probably, again, the ones that are more difficult to find. The ones that are in really good condition would be, you know, highly valuable, considered rare books, etc. So yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, just because I'm obsessed with Sarah Hale, she's my hero. So interestingly, as I mentioned, a dear friend sent me a picture of their copy of The Heritage of Cotton, and it looks so different than mine. So what's remaining of my dust jacket is this, and then this little inside flap, and that was all that's left of mine. It was just tucked into the book. Jill has this gorgeous copy that she picked up at a book sale, and I wanted to flog her because if only I had snatched it first. But the binding of the book itself is done in this beautiful fabric. And then the person that sent me the information about MDC Crawford's bio, her book looks completely different than mine and Jill's. So it was interesting to me. I'm guessing these are multiple editions. But beyond that, I don't know why, like, Jill has this one that's bound in beautiful cloth. I mean, I don't know, it's like a first edition. Like, I don't know. I don't know enough about, like, old-timey book publishing to really, you know, understand the differences here. So anyway, I will read to you Morris's little bio. But first of all, this is Morris. Does he not look like, you know, a failed romance writer? I read one of the passages to my husband where he gets into the bulgy, burly, hairy muscles of the prehistoric men. And my husband was like, I don't know what Morris was into, but so yeah, I guess, yeah, well, it's the pipe. I mean, come on, it's the pipe and the glasses, the little glasses. All right. MDC Crawford, which we know as Morris DeCamp Crawford, has been identified with textiles since 1908. And I remember he wrote this book in 1924. So 1908, when he started in the cotton converting business. So that's like the logistical business of like when bales of cotton are brought in and they do the industrial cotton ginning and all that stuff. Cotton converters are then the people that get the cotton where they're going, which at this point we know involves obviously making fabric, but also making currency. In 1915, this technical background, coupled with his literary talent, and it is a literary talent, has served as the basis for his career. In 1915, he joined the Fairchild Publications, publishers of business journals in the textile field, and pioneered in textile research and in the interpretation of its significance. He was the first man to establish the technological relationship between fabrics and processes of the primitive ages and the modern industrial complex. In his writings, Mr. Crawford has demonstrated unusual versatility. Oh, yes, he's very versatile. In using diverse vocabularies, indeed, like philatile, a word he made up. I researched that, by the way, you guys. I looked up philatile, and other than a word he has made up that means like the filament needs, I could not find this word in the dictionary. Writing the language of the technician for those in the textile field and related professions, the popular language for the general reader in books, magazine articles, and in the script of a motion picture. And that would be Threads of a Nation. I looked that up because I was like, oh no, I hope that this isn't something bad. But Threads of a Nation, apparently, best I can tell, I found it in an educational film catalog from 1940 something. It appears to be a book, or I mean a movie or a film about cotton. So he's staying in his lane, at least as far as cotton goes. The academic language in lectures and scholarly papers for the scholar and student. So essentially, he can talk to the technical people, he can write for the layman, and he can write for scholars. And also he can write for people that are frustrated romantics and want to read some homoerotica. Oh, poor Morris. His books for the general reader are listed on the right inside flap of the jacket. He has appeared as lecturer at the leading museums of the country and in many universities. Mr. Crawford pioneered in bringing about a closer understanding and cooperation between the museums and industry while serving as research associate in textiles in the American Museum of Natural History and in the Museums of Science and Industry of the Julius Rosenwald Foundation in Chicago, and as trustee of the Brooklyn Museum and the Textile Museum of the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C. Oh, and I think I skipped a paragraph here, sorry. For readers in the trades, he has written regularly for Women's Wear Daily and other Fairchild publications, also contributing articles to other journals devoted to fabrics, fashions, and arts and crafts. And cotton porn, indeed. So first of all, a textile museum in D.C. I didn't know anything about this. I'm going to have to look this up. Brooklyn Museum, familiar with that. Of course, American Museum of Natural History. This is the one in New York. Museum of Science and Industry, not familiar with that, but be interested to see if it's still around. So that is Morris. Let's find out. We have another chapter that is related to primitive peoples. And we know he likes a burly caveman. Let's see what he has to say about the primitive technique. So, as a reminder, we are reading The Heritage of Cotton by M.D.C. Crawford. So we know him as Morris Crawford. And he wrote this in 1924. And the chapter we're on today is Chapter 3, Primitive Technique. As cordage and yarn passed from a strictly utilitarian usage into the arts, it became desirable to store surplus product for subsequent use. He likes a shiny sword. Oh my goodness. It was natural that they should wrap this yarn, when spun, about either a stick or a stone, and here begins the two great basic methods of spinning. Sooner or later, the spinner would discover that a stone wrapped in a covering of yarn, if allowed to hang down and set in a twirling motion, helped the spinning of fiber. This type of spinning was generally practiced among wool and flax using peoples, and was in existence in Europe and England within historic times, and is even still practiced by the Spanish shepherds. And he references whirl and distaff spinning illustrations. So, okay, we'll get to that in a minute. Where did we see about Spanish shepherds? I'm trying to think. Why am I blanking this? This was just the other day. Oh, I know what it was. When Jill and I did tatting, crocheting, and knitting on needlework nights, we looked at tools of the trade, and it appears that, you know, some of the basic spinning and you know, crocheting and that type of thing did come from shepherds. They're sitting out there, they're watching their flock, they have access to wool, and so they did things that you know, they made things with the wool. Practically all subsequent spinning has been developed on this principle. The yarns of Dhaka muslins, to be mentioned later, the most exquisite of cotton textures, were spun on this principle, as were those of prehistoric Peru. India later added the spinning wheel to increase the revolutions of the spindle stick, and this wheel, sometime in the early Middle Ages, was introduced in Europe and became the ancestor of all the spinning devices invented in England during the 18th century. A little study of the basketry arts will prove that many of our familiar geometric weaving patterns originated in basketry and were later incorporated in cloth. The same is true of many of the techniques of weaving. There are baskets in tapestry, lino, and twill weaves, and in embroidery, all of which subsequently appear in cloth. Consequently, it is little exaggeration to state that before the first cloth was made, the fundamental methods of ornament, dyeing, and fabric construction had already been developed. Just as the idea of weaving precedes the idea of cloth making, so does the crudest cloth long precede any type of loom. The loom is, after all, only a convenient implement for weaving, not a necessity, until cloth making reaches its finer phases. Today, in the jungles of Borneo, oh boy, I'm sure he's getting ready to say something great. Today, in the jungles of Borneo, rough cotton hammocks are made without a loom, although the loom is used in the weaving of finer fabrics. The Indians of northern Canada make a blanket of twisted strips of rabbit fur without knowledge of any implement similar to a loom. The warp in both cases are stretched on the ground, and the weft or filling intertwined by hand. I'm trying to remember if this was something I showed on the stream or something I just watched on my own, but it was women it was somewhere in the Middle East. It might have been Afghanistan. But they showed this. It's a primitive loom, and they basically hammer down little stakes into the ground, and then they warp it that way. And in the case of, they were, I think they were weaving bands or strips as like they were bridle strips or something to do with the saddle and the reins and the bridle for like camels and horses. So like, I don't know what you call all that gear. But they were, just basically trying to make a long, wide band, and they literally, again, warped it. And then the family, the women of the family, in between all the other stuff that they were doing within their compound, would, go out in this yard and halter. Yes. A head collar. Yes. They would go out and just quickly weave. And then, it wasn't like weaving a blanket. It was weaving just this kind of wide band. So even though it was really long and like literally stretched their entire yard out in the compound of their, where they lived, I think that the weaving went pretty quickly because it was just a quick little back and forth. So that's interesting. And it was interesting watching them do that, but it now occurs to me that it's right. You don't need a loom really if you can rig up something like this. And it's interesting that, I think that video I watched was definitely recent. It was definitely in this century. So the fact that these primitive looms are still used in parts of the world is really interesting. Okay. With the expansion of ideas in cloth making, some kind of a frame to hold the warp in position during the act of weaving becomes necessary. The purpose of the loom is to keep the warp threads parallel to each other in one plane at approximately equal distances apart, and to permit their easy manipulation during the insertion of weft. Okay, and so let's look at the evolution of spinning. And I'm going to actually switch this real quick so I can just read these off and you can see the pictures. Okay, so what we have here is a Greek woman spinning flax by whirl and distaff. Number 2 is a famous prehistoric Peruvian vase showing spinning by draft and twist method. Oh, it's a little person. They've got little hands. Oh, that's interesting. So that's that one. And then down here, this is Aztec mother punishing daughter for poor spinning. Wow! For shame, your warp was crooked. Let's see. Probable method of spinning in prehistoric Peru. This is interesting. The book, the women's work book, 20,000 Years of Women's Work I'm reading, talks about these little spinning bowls. They actually have pictures of this. So 4, this is India. Hindu woman spinning cotton on primitive wheel. 5 is colonial woman spinning cotton with European model of oriental wheel with cards and basket of roving. So there's the cards. I guess that's the roving. Here we have some early 20th century racism. A Chinaman. Good Lord. A man from China spinning cotton by adaptation of the Indian cotton wheel. And then Hull wood. I don't know if that's something Welsh sounding. I don't know. I think it's Hull in the Wood, house in which Crompton invented the spinning mule in Bolton, England, 1779. So it's a very cute little house. All right. Go back to me. Speaking of the use of words, obnoxious and offensive words like Chinaman, I watched the movie 16 Candles this weekend. I was getting tired of Christmas movies. So I'd switched it to, I think IFC had like Caddyshack and a bunch of movies like that. Watched 16 Candles, and those John Hughes movies used to just absolutely be my favorite when I was a teenager and in my 20s. I hadn't seen 16 Candles in a while. And I watched that yesterday while I was sewing, and I was like, wow, this movie really did not age well. I mean, it is super offensive in all kinds of ways. Fast Times at Ridgemont High, also very, very offensive at a lot of turns. So yeah, some movies do not age well from the 80s. All right. There are 2 basic types of looms, one which apparently developed in the Mediterranean flax area, and the type peculiar to the cotton and silk areas. The simplest loom was the former. This consisted of a single rigid horizontal bar from which the warps hung down with weights attached to produce tension and to keep the filial elements parallel to each other. I feel like he's using philatile as both an adverb, an adjective. Yes, an adjective is descriptive. So an adjective and as a noun. Let's see if he can work it in there as a verb. Now the looms he's talking about also I've read about in 20,000 Years of Women's Work. These would think about like a doorway. It's basically like a frame, and then you've got the warp threads just hang down. They'd have a weight at the bottom of each one, and I mean you can imagine they probably swing to and fro, you know, if you were to let them, but then you would just weave through that. This type of loom quickly reached its fullest possible mechanical development. The addition of two parallel slender rods below the loom bar, running under and over opposite groups of warps, further assisted in keeping the warps in their proper relationship and making it easy for the weaver to separate them in weaving units. So I guess here they're starting to separate the warp threads in a way that you could use it to make a pattern. Weaving on such a device resembles a kind of embroidery. By no means do I wish to infer that many beautiful webs were not woven on this implement. The early Greeks produced beautiful designs on it. Perhaps the earliest Assyrian and Babylonian webs were made on this frame. We know of these designs only from the ceramic pictures of the classical Grecian period and in the degenerate forms of the later Coptic tapestries. This loom did not lend itself to the mechanical subtleties of the more highly involved constructions, and it has no descendants in the machines of today. Its history is, however, interesting as proving that a mechanical device may have a very wide terrestrial distribution and be of immense antiquity. We find warp weights in the silt of the Swiss lakes, judged to be between 7,000 and 10,000 years old. And I want to say, since this was written and because of the other book I'm reading, I think that they have found even older, like abandoned civilization kind of areas where these warp weights were in use. This loom is pictured on the famous Grecian vase. Picture here. Illustrating Penelope weaving the tapestry she unraveled each night in answer to the fruitless prayers of her suitors. Yeah, I guess this famous Greek. Yeah, we don't have a picture of it. In a Scandinavian saga, skulls are referred to as warp weights. Oh my. And this type of loom was used up to modern times in Iceland. So in Europe alone, we have a clear record of one weaving device covering areas which were known to use flax and wool of not less than 10,000 years. And many more that they have found since then. To find this loom again, we must cross the northern portion of the Asiatic continent over the narrow island-dotted foggy seas of the Bering Straits until we come to its last expression among the Haida tribes of coastal Alaska. Alaska wasn't even a state yet in this time. Since we know from incontrovertible evidence that the culture of Alaska is of Siberian origin, they've recently possibly disproved that. No one attempts to prove that this particular type of loom was not introduced. It is freely acknowledged as an Asiatic intrusion. Intrusion? Oh my. There is no inference of a common blood relationship between the peoples who over such a long period of time and wide terrestrial area used these two interesting inventions. So I think that anthropologists today could probably punch a lot of holes in what he's saying right now, because there have been discoveries since then. And some of them I think are really, really recent. I merely cite them to prove how wide a distribution such ideas may have. If such an implement can be traced from Asia to the New World, it at least proves that such things are possible. No natural fiber is so pliable as cotton, and probably among the great primitive yarns, none was so weak. Consequently, the uneven tension of warp weights on the single-barred loom was not suitable. Silk, of course, is almost as pliable as cotton, even in its natural gummed state. It is not surprising, therefore, to find the two-barred loom in early China, as in the early cotton areas of India. Whether one borrowed from the other or both from a common source, there is no possible way of telling. As a matter of fact, India and China are but modern names given to very ancient areas of human culture. You know, it seems like he's, even though there are bits and pieces that are making me a little uncomfortable, I feel like he's kind of, he has been, I think, pretty respectful of cultures. The Haida were weaving pre-contact. Okay, so yeah, so those were indigenous people. And you know what I've read recently is that people did not necessarily, I mean, and I guess they have some evidence of people crossing the Bering Strait back when there were, I guess it was ice. Ice was available for them to walk across. Ooh, I'm really bad with this prehistoric history stuff, you guys. But now they're saying that some of the peoples of North America and probably even like Central America were in just absolutely indigenous people. They sprang from civilization here in the quote unquote New World and did not necessarily walk across the Bering Strait and down into North America. So I haven't read a whole lot on it, but I did read one article fairly recently about that they were really challenging that long held belief about, you know, the people coming from that area into the New World. The New World. It's not really a new world, is it? Okay. The earliest form of the cotton loom consisted of two parallel bars held apart by being attached to other objects. Around these bars, the warp was wrapped. Such a loom still exists in primitive parts of Asia and is found in the more inaccessible jungles of South America. The first improvement was the introduction of two light rods to keep the warps evenly divided and to bring them into a common weaving plane. The next addition was the attaching of the warps to a pliable twisted cord instead of directly to the loom bars, and fastening this cord by a string to the bars. This increased the evenness of the weaving plane and prevented the warps from cutting during the constant movement of weaving. So all of these additions and changes seem like they're solving problems. They're iterating and solving problems. Which, I mean, this is how software is developed today. You know, it's interesting that, you know, you keep adding and tweaking things. It's called agile development. And I believe that this is an example of the, you know, people in prehistory doing the exact same thing. The last additions to this implement were two sticks with loops of cord attached at equal distances. Through the loops of one, even number warps passed. Through the loops of the other, the odd numbered. These rods are called hilds, assuming I'm pronouncing that right. Helds. The function of these rods is to permit the weaver to divide alternate warps into equal groups for the convenient insertion of weft in weaving. So I guess is that making the shed? It's making that the hole that the shuttle goes through. The weaver lifts one rod with the attached warps and thus forms the triangular space, yes, the shed, through which to insert the weft. Releasing this bar, he lifts the second one and forms another triangular space, or shed, with the second group of warps. By alternating this movement and inserting the weft in each shed, a woven fabric can be made. There are certain minor additions of tools, such as a heavy stick of polished wood called a weaver's sword, or battern, for beating each pick of weft closely to its predecessor, and lighter daggers of polished wood, or bone, to insert at right angles between two warps to produce more compact fabrics. In time, a comb-like implement, which operated on a larger number of warps, was invented to take the place of the weaving battern and dagger. In India, this form of loom had a further addition. The heeled bars were formed into a frame known as huddles. So those are those ones that you're attached by a cord running over an overhanging bough of a tree and by loops to the feet of the weaver stretched between the warps. We will have a picture of this, I think, on the next page. I like the how he's referring to his pictures. I like that. Yeah, I think we see that in the next page. The separation of the warps into weaving sheds was performed with the movements of the feet. This loom is simply a mechanical improvement over the earlier type I have described. So again, it's more of that, like, you know, I'm clearly not a weaver, but it's that the changing of the sheds, like those spaces opening and your weft going through there, that creates the patterns. Simple, right? Just like whipping up that bag from Godey's. Undoubtedly, this form of loom was introduced into Europe from Asia Minor at a very early date. The 14th century English silk loom, illustrated in the text, is evidently the same in character as the Indian loom. If silk and cotton were introduced at about the same time or a little earlier, and the spinning wheel, it is not difficult to understand how the loom was borrowed also. The basis of all modern looms is the two-barred principle of warp arrangement and shedding with heddles and harnesses. I hope in this somebody followed. Hello. Oh gosh, I can't see it very well on my screen. El Gordo de Buenos Aires. Okay then, welcome. El Gordo de Buenos Aires. I think I need to change the color of the font so I can see it easier. So welcome and thank you for following. Let's see. I hope this technical discussion of the development of the primitive loom, I have disabused the reader's mind of the idea that it is simple in the sense of lacking in breadth of intellectual conception. Yay, welcome. It is in fact one of man's greatest technical achievements. On this type of loom, every cloth we know today, every weave in the history of cloth making has been produced. Peru, perhaps the greatest of textile people, of whom we have an accurate material record, never developed the loom beyond this hand type. All right, now let us look at these pictures. Actually, you know what? This chapter's almost done. Let me finish the chapter and then we'll switch over and look. Ah, well, welcome. I hope that what I'm talking about is interesting to you in your English learning adventure. This is a book we're reading called The Heritage of Cotton. So it may or may not be interesting to you. And I have to warn you, the author made up some words. So there may be some made up words that are neither English nor any other language. Okay, both of these types of looms, the true hand loom and the foot treadle loom, are used in Europe to this day. The hand loom appears among the rug weavers of Asia Minor and the tapestry weavers of Europe, and the foot treadle loom, without the addition of power, is used for the production of the finer fashion fabrics in France and Switzerland, and is even finding a footing in America. The fact that this type of loom originated in India and spread to Europe, that we find it together with the technical subtleties of fabric construction in the cotton area in the New World, is difficult to explain except on the assumption of direct or indirect social contact. All right, so let's look at these little illustrations. Switch over a different camera. Okay. So here, illustration 1. This is a warp weighted. No, wait a minute. Okay. So this is the stuff and this is the stuff. Okay. So warp weighted loom. So you can see what that looks like. It's like, it's literally like two branches with another branch over the top of it. But I mean, you can see it's almost like, a doorway, and then the pieces, the strings of the warp hang down, and then they weave it across this way, and then these are the weights at the bottom. Let's see, number 2 is a warp weighted loom from Scandinavia. So it looks like, oh no, I'm sorry, 2, that's the correct one. And then it looks like they've got those bars in there that stretch open. You see my hands there, they stretch open. That shed there. So these are those extra bars they've brought in. 3 is a Greek loom from Penelope and the suitor from a Greek vase. Okay, so this is what they were talking about. He was talking about when he talked about a vase. So it's this illustration. Why can't I get this to... I think I need a different... Okay, I think that's working now. Number 4 is a warp weighted loom from Iceland. So it's really the same deal as this. And then number 5, this is a Haida warp weighted loom from Alaska with ceremonial apron and tapestry weave. Now that is very, very complex in my opinion for a warp weighted loom. That's really, really fascinating. Okay, so down here, we've got a diagram of a Peruvian tapestry loom. 2 is drawing of tapestry weaving with design notations. These pictures are very tiny. 3 is the common type of Peruvian loom. You could see they've got the shed there. 4. Oh, that's an actual picture of a prehistoric Peruvian loom with partially woven double cloth. Oh, and look at the design that's being woven in there. That's really pretty. 5 is a Hindu weaving on a loom with a heddle frame and to separate the warps. It's a little bit difficult to see what's going on there. This looks like trees that these are strung between. Number 6 is a 2-barred loom with heddle used by silk weavers in England in the 14th century. And then finally 7 is the Chinese loom for cotton weaving. So I think here now you have those things like pulling strings. The strings that are pulling on the warp. Interesting. Well, disappointingly, it appears that Morris was able to get through primitive techniques without lascivious comments about prehistoric people. Maybe it was just that one chapter the editor missed. All right. So in chapter 4, we will get to the New World. And so this is starting off with Columbus in 1492. So that will be an exciting read on Thursday. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Mary Kay, if you're out there, I hope you're enjoying this book. I am finding it very interesting. He's a decent writer, I have to say. It's it's a lot of the history I think that we saw with with MacIver Percival and the chintz fabrics, but also like Avril Colby talking about quilting. But he seems a little more interesting, a little less dry, I guess, in some ways. So we will have to immortalize his descriptions of prehistoric men, though. Hopefully we'll find some more interesting commentary in here that we can make fun of him for. All right, guys. I'm trying to find time to pick this one up. This is the Modern Empire of Cotton book, and I have not gotten a chance yet. But it doesn't seem like it's quite as fascinating, and it's written a little bit more modernly technical. So, it's definitely like a different standard. So I'm going to try to get into this one this weekend and kind of see if we're starting to see some overlap or not. If Sven Beckert just went off on a completely different track, considering he's a modern writer and Morris Crawford was writing at the turn of the century. So Well, I am going to leave it there, you guys. And I've got sewing and whatnots to do. Yeah. Hope you all have a great week. And I'm projecting, obviously, but I'm hoping your holiday plans continue to go with ease, as our friend Robin says. Yeah, I'm like I said, I'm. You guys know this already. I've mentioned this several times. I'm kind of on the struggle bus this holiday season, so I'm really focusing on doing, easier things, not overwhelming myself. I always bite off more than I can chew. So I hope that my week goes that way. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, and I hope yours does too. So, you are most welcome, BFD. I hope it was interesting. Sometimes the nerdy stuff that we love probably makes other people go like, huh? But yes, it's wonderful to have you here. And oh shoot, you know what, BFD, I had mentioned to Druid that we should share one of the links to you making some music. So we'll have to do that next time. I'm gonna expose you and your musical talent. So, all right, guys, have a wonderful week. Thank you as always for the subscriptions and the follows. I could not do this without you. Ah, yes, there we go. Druid has shared. You've been outed as a bluegrass musician. And Druid sent me your link a while back, and I have to say, you and your folks are very talented. You guys are. I like your music. Yeah. All right, guys, take care. I will see you on Thursday. Hopefully you'll join me and Jill tomorrow on quilt nerding. I have totally forgotten what we're doing tomorrow. But yeah, there's Jill actually has some cool things to update on. She did some fun stuff this weekend. So, oh, don't ugh. You've got 8 people that have now seen your link. So 8 more people that that know more about you now. So you're very welcome, Jan. All right, guys, take care, and I will talk to you soon. Mwah!